Hello everybody, it's Melanie from Mel's Inky Fingers, and I'm here to show you how to make this beautiful project, which is actually the bonus card included in the August Creatively Inked kit, where we feature the Scenic Adventure Bundle. This bundle really is beautiful. I love the varied elements to create nature scenes and beautiful landscapes. Between the trees and the flowers, you can create sky and different ground elements. It's really been a lot of fun to work with. So this bonus card actually is a really great scrap buster because you can use up strips of your cardstock. Now I know I often will do scrap busting projects, but usually I'm using up strips of designer series paper. Now the techniques are interchangeable, but I think it's fun to see the cardstock in action because it definitely does give you a different look. So, and we will change up the embellishment a little bit here so you can see some different options. So let's get started. So the dimensions to create this project are all included in the tutorial for the Creatively Inked kit. Now the card will be completed, but you can pull from your stash to create more of these, and I really do hope you try it. So the cardstock that we're going to use for this, I'm using a pecan pie card base, and this is a standard card base cut 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4. Then we have a piece of 4 by 5 1/4 inch pretty peacock, which coordinates with our ink, and that's going to be the first layer on our card front. And then we have a piece that's the same size of basic white that will go on the inside. And then a second piece of basic white that's cut just a bit smaller. It's 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. That's going to be a front layer. We also have a 1/2 inch piece of basic white. This is 5 inches long by a 1/2 inch. And that is going to be our sentiment for the front. And then we have all these little scraps of cardstock that we're going to use for our project. So we have Coastal Cabana, that's our first one. And this is going to be 2.5 by 3/4. Then we have Summer. Let's see, this is 1 inch by 3 1/8. Then we have a piece of Pool Party that's a 1/2 inch wide by 3 inches long. And we're just going to kind of stagger these like this across the front. Then we have a piece of Balmy Blue, and this is 7/8 inch wide by 3.5 inch long, so a little bit longer. Then we're going to jump into our Lost Lagoon, and Lost Lagoon is 5/8 by 3. And then last but not least, our Basic Beige. And the Basic Beige is 7/8 by 2 3/4. So we're going to line these up against each other like this, and then we're going to stamp across that. Now, as we stamp across that, those strips are going to want to move. So you're going to want to find a way to secure, sorry, let me adjust my light here, to secure those in place. So I chose to not secure mine, and I stamped a lot of these and I just laid them down as I went. But you can also use some washi tape. Now this, just any washi tape will do. You could probably also use some Scotch tape if you wanted, but I think the washi will release better. So I'm going to take a piece and turn it upside down, and then I'm going to take a second piece to hold this in place. And this will allow me to put those strips on there, and I'll be able to stamp on them and they're not going to move. So I'm just going to arrange them how I want them to be on my card project. So they're going to be staggered a little bit. So here's my Basic Beige, which will be the end. My Pool Party that's going to be up against my Balmy Blue. And again, you're going to want to kind of butt those up against each other because we are going to stamp on them and then add them to our card front. And I want to adjust this a little bit. So what's nice about the washi tape is you can adjust these how you want them. And if you make a lot of these, you can reuse the washi tape. You don't have to get new washi tape for each one. So I like how those are laid out, so that makes it easy. So now let's talk about what else we use to make this project. So I'm going to pull in 2 ink colors. I have Pretty Peacock and Pecan Pie. The Pecan Pie is going to be for the sentiment that's going to coordinate with our card base. And then the Pretty Peacock is going to be what we're going to stamp everything. And let me adjust my light a little bit. I feel like this is dark, and I know you have my light shining there, but I think that's better. And then we're going to want all 3 of our trees. So the trees, we have one that's tall and narrow, and then one that's kind of medium and a little more full, and then we have this tiny little guy. All right, so we're going to start by stamping off the edge with the little tree. And there's no right or wrong to how you stamp these, which is what makes this really nice. So you can just choose kind of where you put your tree. I usually bring mine at varied heights, and I'm stamping that one right over both of the pieces. So now I'm kind of coming over here onto my pool party. And then I'm going to bring in the little one again. And again, there's no right or wrong here. You can stamp these however you want. You can stamp them in whatever order you want. And when you put these on the card, you're going to put some of them on with Stampin' Dimensionals, and some of them are going to be adhered directly to the card, so that you're going to have varying heights to the strips. All right, so very easy. So now we have all those stamped, and we can add them to our card project. So let's pull in some Stampin' Dimensionals. Look at, I'm out of dimensionals. I didn't refill these, so I'll use my little ones. And then some Stampin' Seal or liquid glue. Either one will be just fine. I really like using liquid glue when I think I may want to adjust the placement of things. So let's pull in our card base here and score that with the bone folder. And then we're going to have our Pretty Peacock and the smaller basic white layer. So the basic white layer is going to give us that little Pretty Peacock edge. So we will adhere this in place. And that is what we will adhere our trees to. So we'll get this centered nicely. All right. And then this is going to go on our card front like that. So I'm going to use liquid glue again. You could use Stampin' Seal if you prefer for this. There we go. So now we have our card base ready. Now the second basic white layer is going to go on the inside of our card, so we're going to just set that aside for now. But we're going to transfer these strips onto our card front. You could do this a couple different ways. You could do the balmy blue strip first and then work to the sides. So you could slide this off and adhere that in place and then add the rest of them. I just kind of guessed and started with the basic beige strip over here, and I have about 1/4 inch on the one side. So I'm just going to put a couple strips of my liquid glue down and leave about 1/4 inch there, and then just start moving these strips in place. And you can line up the trees because they are stamped over the seam, so you'll be able to line them up. And now this one is going to go on with some Stampin' Dimensionals. And since I just have little ones here, I'll have to put several on it, and that's okay. This is a pretty fast card to make, and it's a really easy technique if you want to make multiples, because you can reuse this washi tape to make lots. All right, so I'm going to line this one up and then just kind of drop it down. Now you can see It's a little higher than I want it. So you could slide this down just a little bit if you wanted to, because even though the tree is stamped, you can kind of shift it a little bit and it still works. So I shifted that down just a tiny bit. So now I'm going to put a little liquid glue here and add my pool party strip. And then Summer Splash. And this can be done with any, what I like about this is it can be done with any color combination. You can have a monochromatic look, you can do contrasting colors, you can do ombre effect, and this kind of has that little ombre effect going with all the transition of colors. I'm going to adjust where I put that a little bit. I think that looks good. And then last but not least, I have the Coastal Cabana piece here. And I'm just going to take that and line it up on my liquid glue. And that is the card front. So really easy and fast to make. So I'm just going to take this and move it out of the way. If you wanted to make more, you can just set that aside and keep using it. So now we have the sentiment that we're going to put across the front. So I'm going to stamp this in pecan pie ink. So let's bring our pecan pie ink in. And I didn't put this on a block. Sorry about that. So let's take off my tree. And we're going to need that for the inside, so we don't want that to go too far. All right, so pecan pie ink, we'll ink this up, and there we go. And that is the only thing we use the pecan pie ink for. So now you can adhere this in place. This is going to go on the front like this, kind of like that. But before you adhere that down, we're going to put a linen thread bow on the back of that. So this is my linen thread. I'm just going to tie a bow that I know will pop out from behind there. So you want the loops big enough so that you can see them, although it's a 1/2 inch strip, so it doesn't need to be too terribly generous. And then you can put either a glue dot or a little bit of Stampin' Seal on there, just enough to tack this in place. So that looks good like that. So that's going to sit like this. So now I'm going to put a dimensional here and a dimensional there, and you can even put one right here if you would like, and that will hold this strip in place. There we go. So cute and easy. And now let's add just a little bit of bling. So we have some options. So I enjoyed adding these flat brass butterflies on this one. And then these two have the dragonflies, and these are the dragonflies and birds brass embellishments. This is an online exclusive. They're really, really cute. They work great for cards with nature scenes or florals. And I did the dragonflies on one, and I did the birds here on the other. So either one looks really good, but the butterflies always work as well. And the butterflies come in a different pack, so you could choose either of these. So let's add a couple of these, and then we'll move to the inside of our card and finish up our project. So I'm going to use, the birds come in 2 different sizes. So I'll put a bigger bird here and a smaller bird down there. You can add as few or as many as you would like. But these really are cute. Let me see if I can get this tucked back in. All right. So now let's move to the inside of our project. So we're going to need our remaining piece of cardstock, which is our basic white layer that's cut 4 inches by 5 1/4. And we're going to take our pretty peacock ink, and then we are going to just stamp this really simply on the inside. Whoops, my big tree, I took it off, so let's make sure it's stuck. So we're going to ink this up, and I would like to stamp this along the edge. I like stamping off the edge on my projects. I think that it really does. Actually, I think I want to do my small one next to that. And then the more full tree. And I'm going to give it a little space and then stamp it there. So really easy. You could do just one tree if you preferred. And now we can adhere this to the inside of our project. If you would like a sentiment, you can add a sentiment, but this gives you a little note card so you can write a special little message to your recipient. So just tuck that in the center, and there's your project. I hope you like this project. Now, if you are receiving the August Creatively Inked kit, you are going to receive this project already completed in your kit. And if you would like to make more, you will have both this video tutorial as well as the written instructions to complete this. And I hope you give this a try. It's really fun, and you can make it in any color combination that you would like. Thanks for watching.